What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I usually ask how my co-host is doing, Tim Legler, but I already know. I saw the Commanders score. I know how you're doing, Legs.
I'm in a very good mood today, and went to the game. I'd missed the last.
Oh, look at him! Look at him there on screen.
Yeah, look at that. It's perfect. I love it. I missed the last couple home games, so it was good to get back into the stadium. Took my nephew to the game. He's a big Commanders fan, and it was nice to not sweat one out like normal, where every game in that building comes down to the final play or something. We had a big early, smoked Tennessee, got this thing back on the right track. Jaden Daniels looked great, so I'm in a very good mood today. You're right.
And, did you stay through the end? It's a blowout, so I don't know what the rule is here, but did you watch the end?
True story. I texted Scott Van Pelt during the game after they were up 21, end of first quarter. He's also a Commanders fan. I texted him, said I was at the game, feels good. And I texted him the picture that he always puts on the air when I'm with him of Commander Tim, when I'm in that Commander uniform. He superimposed my face onto it. We get such a laugh out of him. And then it was 28-0, and I told him flat out, and I'm not leaving.
Yeah,
no matter what. I'm not leaving the stadium. So I ended up actually leaving with about 4 minutes to go, the game well in hand. So I did get a little bit of a jump, but there's no way they were blowing a 42-13 lead or whatever they had at that time.
We'll forgive you for that one. I think that one's probably a little bit more.
Yeah, so I'm happy, man. It sets, when they win, it sets up my whole week of just being in a good mood. It really does.
So we had great shows for you all week. The Commanders won. It's going to be a great week on the All-NBA show. We really have a great show today, man. Whenever we take 5 days off, of course, we had the holiday and then the weekend. Whenever we take that much time off, I feel like everything happens. And there's a lot of storylines. The #1 team versus the #2 team in both conferences. We're going to go deep on both of those games today. And then a bunch of teams, the Magic, the Bucks, the Grizzlies, the Mavs, even the Hawks. They're going to get some shout outs later in the show because they're doing some pretty special stuff. But we're going to start with our first game, which we're breaking down. And let me rewind the clock a little bit here, Legs, to last Wednesday, our last show, when we were talking about what we might be talking about on Monday. And one of the things I said is, I think when we come back on Monday, the Cavs will not be in first place in the East. They had a 2-game cushion, a couple games against the Hawks, and then the big one against the Celtics. And the stage was set for that exact thing to happen. They struggle. They drop a couple to the Hawks. So that game was for first place. But no Jaylen Brown, no Derek White, 2 big losses for the Celtics. But the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell get it done in the clutch. 20 points from Donovan Mitchell in the fourth quarter, including some huge shots. That's what stood out to me, and I'm going to talk about that here in a little second. But first, I want to get your take. What stood out to you about this win for the Cavs over the Celtics?
A couple things. We'll start with Donovan Mitchell because here's the deal with the Cavaliers, right? They've we've been singing their praises, and justifiably so. They're a very good team, and they've got good balance with their team with guard play, bigs. They've got bench play. They've got shooting, clearly well coached and connected to their coach. But the one thing you still have to have, even if you have all of that, you better have the closing guy, the home run hitter that's going to take over possessions when you have to have it. And sometimes that means just go do it on your own, which is really what Donovan Mitchell did at the key time in the game. It's not like they're running complicated sets. He's not a guy that's going to give it up, run down on the baseline and do figure 8 off down pins the way Steph Curry, would, to create that kind of action that'll lead to something great. He's just going to get the ball and he's going to go. And he hit 3 threes in a very short period of time, all of them off the dribble, all of them like tough shots. And it's the one thing, the element of their team, Adam, that they have to make them legitimate. When you say, can this team legitimately get to a conference final or maybe even to an NBA final? And with the start they've had, like, that's a fair question to start wondering if, like, is this legitimately a team you could see representing the Eastern Conference in the NBA finals? And I think when you get games like this against this type of team, even though they were shorthanded, I understand that, doesn't matter. Cleveland was shorthanded when they played Boston the last time, and they almost beat them in Boston. So it is what it is, man. You know, everybody's shorthanded, I feel like, all the time anymore anyway. This is a really good idea of what they are. And having a guy like Mitchell who could throw those haymakers that you're going to need. You know, Tatum is really kind of that guy for Boston, although they can really spread it around who that might be. Might be Jalen Brown on a given night. Might be Derek White on a given night that has those big shots in the fourth. And obviously some nights it could be Porzingis. They can spread it around a lot easier. With Cleveland, it's going to be Mitchell taking matters into his own hands, and he delivered in a huge way at a time in the game when it was hanging in the balance. He takes difficult shots off the dribble, huge step backs, you know, great elevation on those shots, considering they're late in the game and there's fatigue setting in. And the guy flat out just got it done with enormous shot making when they had to have it late. So you asked me my first thought. That's the first thing that stood out to me was the way Mitchell played down the stretch.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. The shots, saying they were, you know, tough shots almost doesn't do it justice. They were big time shots, one after the other. And, you know, I have to give him some credit here too, because coming into the year, when they got started like 6-0 or whatever it was, I said, look, I'm not going to buy them in part because I worry Donovan Mitchell is going to play hero ball too much. Over the next several games, Darius Garland had been the guy just as often as Donovan Mitchell had in the clutch. And when that happened, when Garland had it going, Mitchell, I thought, did a great job of getting out of the way. When there was team basketball that needed to be played in the clutch, I thought Donovan Mitchell did a good job of participating in that. But the flip side of my criticism, the thing that actually makes this a strength for the Cavs is sometimes you need hero ball. Sometimes you need a guy to say, hey, it's not working for us and we need to take over. And last night was a perfect example of that. He was a top-tier superstar in the clutch last night. He was a Tatum, a LeBron, a Steph, a Kevin Durant. He was that caliber of a closer last night on tough shot making. And finding that balance is still going to be something that I'm going to question with the Cavs all the way up and until they win in the postseason and consistently, you know, find the right note to play. But this year, I think they have. And last night is a perfect example of the flip side of that coin. When they needed hero ball, he had it in him, and he just executed phenomenally.
Yeah, look, it's to, you know, to kind of stick with your analogy. I mean, sometimes, you know, I love watching baseball, particularly, you know, late in the year and into the postseason. And sometimes you get into those postseason games with all that drama. And sometimes, you know what? It's nice if you can string together 4 or 5 hits in an inning, but sometimes you need a 3-run home run. Period.
Yeah.
And that's what Mitchell was hitting them with. Because if he misses, you know, 2 of those 3 shots, probably they lose the game. That's how important they were at the time he took them. And I will say this, and we'll get into Boston more here in a second. I think we're usually, like we like to do, finish up with the positives first and the winning team. We got a couple more elements with them. Boston helped them out because they were contrary to how they operate at their best offensively. We'll get into that in a second. But the Cavaliers took advantage of it. And look, they had nice nights from other people too. And I thought their defense was very, very good all night. Particularly their ability to close out to the 3-point line, which is something that I think they pride themselves in. It's very difficult to do against Boston. And I look at the numbers, Adam, you know, they match them from the 3-point line, which first of all, few teams do on any given night, right? We talk about it all the time. Boston can hit you some nights with a 24-point discrepancy from the 3, or sometimes it's much bigger than that. And they matched them, but they did it on 13 fewer 3-point attempts. So not only did they match the production that you're going to need in the firepower, because it's hard to beat the Celtics if you're getting a lot of mid-rangers, layups, dunks, and free throws, you're going to have to hit them with some threes to kind of at least be in the arena with them in terms of volume of 3-pointers made. They did it. They did it significantly more efficiently. And so that to me was a massive difference in the game as well.
A guy who stood out to me that I want to get your opinion on is Isaac Okoro, who I really like. I'm a big fan of his. And he plays 24 minutes last night. I think they're going to need him because he's a phenomenal defensive player. And when you get into the playoffs, you need to have as many, even perimeter defensive players. I know they have some bigs that can really guard, but they're going to need some guys that can guard out on the perimeter. I thought he did a good job of that. But the play that stood out to me was late in the game. They run a pick and roll. I think it was Mitchell, but off the top of my head, I don't remember, gets trapped and they get it to Okoro on the roll, and he makes a phenomenal read. Guards, when you talk about offensive skill, think about shooting, scoring, whatever. Sometimes just the ability to relieve pressure and attack 4-on-3 while making the right play, it's so valuable. And he made a big one. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that consistently, although I think he can. But last night he made that was the play of the game outside of all of Donovan Mitchell's shot making, was his ability to create something 4-on-3 in the clutch. And I just like him. I think the Cavs are going to need him.
I remember that play vividly. So that was, you're talking about, I believe, the play where he ran out to set a ball screen. He kind of got almost all the way over to Mitchell and then slipped. Porzingis was guarding him. Porzingis jumped way out on the floor to it was like a semi-soft trap against Mitchell. Okoro dove down the middle. They hit him. And then Porzingis, as most 7-footers inclination is to do, sprinted back to the lane. When, that's not really his responsibility at that point because someone else has to slide over and pick up the roll guy, which was Okoro. And there was a couple defenders kind of coming up to meet him up the lane. But Porzingis ran back toward him as well. And that meant Mobley could cut along the baseline, and he hit him perfectly for the dunk on the baseline. I remember that play, and it was unusual looking because normally Mitchell's going to run that with Mobley or Allen, typically. One of those guys in that situation, or maybe it's going to be Garland running it with a big. It was Mitchell and like another small guy. And Boston was in a weird matchup with Porzingis guarding this wing player, and they got them all out of sorts, and they executed to perfection. I mean, that's really what the NBA has become. High ball screen, play out of it. Either you turn the corner, get to the rim, you stop and shoot the three, or you get pressure and you hit the guy diving to the middle, who then makes a play to either wing typically, or he can throw maybe a pocket pass. That's what NBA offense looks like now. And they executed that when they had to have it. They got a high quality shot, pretty much an unmissable shot at the rim in a critical moment in the game by running a little bit of an unorthodox 2-man game.
And it's going to be, I think a lot of this, you're right, that the big, being able to make that play, that's a big one because you're running a lot of 1-4 and 1-5 ball screens. But in today's NBA, there's a lot of matchup hunting in the clutch, right? You're looking for the weakest defender. So you run guard to guard action, and guards that are able to, make plays out of that are just as important, especially if they're non-shooters. And Okoro did a good job on that one. The other thing that stood out to me, and this is probably more of a Boston was shorthanded thing, but to start the fourth quarter was very interesting, because you have Pritchard and Porzingis on the court for Boston, and you got Mobley on the court. And the first 3-4 minutes really became a battle between Mobley and Porzingis. A lot of post touches, a lot of going to those guys, and Mobley outplayed him. I mean, Mobley, you think of Porzingis as the better offensive player, especially scorer in that type of situation, but I thought Mobley did a great job of attacking him in the fourth in a way that kept them in the game so they could make their late fourth quarter run.
Mobley, and during that stretch you're talking about, Mobley hit a short little jumper. He hit a jump hook.
Yep.
He got to the line multiple times, 2 times, made free throws. The playoff we were just talking about, that happened. They're up 2 with 35 seconds to go when he gets that dunk late in the game to put him up forward. It really was the biggest possession, I think, of the game. You're right. And look, we've been talking about Mobley a lot this year, and just him taking a step forward, continuing to show the progression offensively. I think there are some nights leading up to this season when I felt like he was never aggressive enough in looking for his own offense. It's another element for them. It forces teams to have to commit a bigger guy to him, and it's going to make things easier on the other side of the floor or in the paint for somebody else. And Mobley, I feel like, has been doing that all year. This is career high in scoring. He's pretty much right where he's been for the last couple of years as a rebounder. He's very consistent, actually, if you look at his career. His shooting splits, his rebounding, his blocks, everything's really much consistent across the board, but his scoring has taken a slight uptick this year, and I think it's needed for their team. And so if you go from 15-7 to 17-7, it doesn't sound like a big jump. 2 points a night is, because if you're getting now basically 18 a night, that means there's going to be plenty of games mixed in there where you're in the low 20s. It's exactly what Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland need from one of those bigs. So we're both obviously very impressed with them, man. The start that they've had, they get this team the Celtics, who we know everybody expects to, have a great shot at repeating twice in a very short period of time, and they play great games against them on both occasions. They lose a tight one in Boston, their first loss of the year, and then they come back and they get them here in short order, and they take advantage of Boston being a little bit shorthanded, but I thought they did what they had to do to come back, erase the deficit, and get this win.
The other thing that I think is very important for the Cavs, Darius Garland, undersized guy, competes really hard defensively, but he's undersized, and you're going up against a Boston team that likes to pick their matchup and then ISO against him, Jason Tatum in particular, and he got a bunch of buckets on him late. But Garland, I thought, competed and got a couple stops, or I should say forced a couple misses. It wasn't necessarily that he got stops, but forced him into the toughest shot he could, and Tatum came up short. But after the game, there was a really interesting comment from Kenny Atkinson. He said, I just told him in the locker room, I don't want to hide him anymore on defense. It's playoff basketball. He's got to accept the challenge. We did so many different things tactically to help him out a little bit, but we went back to our regular coverage at the end, and he got 2 big stops at the end. And this is the key, man. In the playoffs, in today's NBA, you can't hide players. You can't scheme around weak players perfectly. You can do some stuff, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to count on your weakest defender getting stops in the clutch. Garland, just by virtue of his size, is that to the Cavs. And last night, he at least competed. He had a good quote after the game, said something like, I'm no punk. Like, I'm no punk. Like, I know they're going to come after me, but I'm not going to back down. I don't know if I'm going to buy that, because I think in the playoffs, Garland is going to have to really come up big on some tough stops in some of these Eastern Conference scorers. But at least last night, I was impressed with the job that he did. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree. He's going to be the guy that's going to get attacked. There's no doubt. Whether you're going to, put him in ball screen, try to get switches, go at him. That's what he's going to do. Now, fortunately, they have the infrastructure defensively to help protect him in large ways, because they've got 2 guys that can roam defensively and cover a lot of ground. To shadow and bluff toward him and rake down a little bit if he's going to get a bigger guy trying to post him up. If he gets beat off the dribble on a switch and there's a bigger athletic wing that gets the ball, you have to nail or at the short ISO area and try to blow by. Allen and Mobley are both back there protecting him. And I just think this team in general, they protect each other very, very well. They do not leave each other hung out to dry. They remind me a lot of Oklahoma City in that way. And eventually they might look a lot like Oklahoma City when you get lineups with Holmgren and Hartenstein on the floor at the same time. It'll look a lot like that, because very few teams get away with playing 2 bigs that can really protect the rim. You might have 2 bigs. A lot of times one of those guys is a very good perimeter defender and more comfortable out there. You're talking about 2 guys that are very comfortable as your last line of defense. So the infrastructure around whatever weaknesses they have defensively, whether it's Garland, whether it's they go after Sam Merrill, whatever it may be, Niang sometimes gets attacked that way with an ISO on a wing. They've got the infrastructure to protect those guys. They're not going to leave you on an island or let you hang out to dry, but you have to battle and compete. I thought Garland did a pretty good job of that last night.
The last one I have, and then there's an interesting comment in the chat we'll get to after this, but the last one I have, I think you'll appreciate this one. End of game, Boston went to one of their trickery plays, and we've seen this a handful of times, and you have lamented how defense have fallen for it. You put all of your players in the back court offensively, and it's almost like you're trying to confuse the defense. They overextend, and all of a sudden you get them out of position. I thought that Atkinson and the Cavs made a great decision last night. They go zone. Coming out of the timeout, they see all of the Boston Celtics line up like they're running a football play, and they go, all right, we're going to fall back in a zone and let you do whatever goofery you're going to do. And it threw Celtics off. Like, that play actually squashed them. And I just thought that was kind of neat, because we've seen that exact setup punish some teams late, and it didn't work against the Cavs last night.
Yeah, and look, the Celtics are going to go to most situations side out of bounds late, with basically one possession game or slightly more than that. Yeah. They're going to go to these sets where they're trying to run Jason Tatum from the backcourt full speed off a brush screen and get him moving, like on the move, catch the basketball with momentum going toward the rim. They love running that set. It's usually for Tatum. Sometimes it's Jaylen Brown. He wasn't out there last night, so you knew it was going to be Tatum. So you're right. You come out of that, you say, we're not doing it, because I've seen some very bizarre finishes to games this year with teams overly aggressive, trying to deny guys inbounds passes that far into the backcourt, and you get screened off. It's really hard to recover from that. It creates all kinds of miscommunication. Cleveland wasn't having it, and they get the win, man. And that felt like something that game last night, just the way that they felt about themselves after, their reaction after, the way they handled themselves down the stretch, not every win in this league is created equal, man. And that certainly wasn't. That's got to be the one that's the feather in their cap right now to this point in the season, even though Boston was playing shorthanded.
And I know the Boston fans are going to say that, oh,
Yeah.
we didn't have this or that. It's true. It is true that they didn't have those players, but the Cavs still needed a win. One, because they were coming in on a losing streak, dropping a couple to Atlanta. But two, you don't want to give the upper hand to Boston. You want to say, no, you better bring your whole squad. You're going to try to beat us. We know what we're doing, and you're not going to get us shorthanded. I do want to bring up one comment that I see here that's interesting. My guy, Carter Rodriguez, says, interested to hear how you guys think the Cavs can handle Porzingis at the nail. Celtics got a ton of switches on guards on islands against KP. We talked a little bit about this already, but this is the difference with the Celtics when they have Kristaps Porzingis, is they have somebody they can go to in those moments, and he's been a lot better at being aggressive on switches. I actually thought they did a good job last night, but is there anything about that matchup specifically that gives you pause, the Cavs trying to guard Boston?
No, look, it's going to be tough for any team, that matchup, because he's 7'3" and he's got a great shooting touch. So when he gets involved in ball screen and you want to switch that's what he's going to do. He's going to roll you right to the elbow, top of the key or the nail, put his arm out, catch it, turn. And there was a weird one last night. I think it was Garland, if I'm not mistaken. Did you see the play where Porzingis caught the ball there in the fourth quarter, turned, and like his left arm was sort of pinned because Garland was so far up into his chest, he couldn't even get his left arm on the ball. And he took the ball with literally like this with one hand. It never touched the other hand. And he just threw it up at the basket because he was expecting a call. He didn't get it. It ended up being the most awkward shot attempt he's going to take all year. But look, the bottom line is he's so long. That's a tough matchup. Yeah. Here's my advice, though, to the Cleveland Cavaliers and any other team. He's not going to beat you doing that.
Right.
That's what they're going to run, and they want to go to that. Have at it. Have at it. Even if he makes 3 in a row, don't overreact to it. That's not their best version of offense. Look, it's nice to have that in your offense. It's another weapon to go to, particularly if one of their 2 forwards are out of the game. It's nice to have that because it's a very difficult shot to stop. He concerns me much more with the pick and pop stuff. When he gets hot from 3, that element to his game and asking bigs and people to have to cover all that when he's shooting the ball from 29, 30 feet and he gets hot, that to me is a much more lethal part of their offense than him making some contested 2-point shots 15 to 17 feet from the rim. Just don't foul him. Do the best you can with that switch. If he shoots over the top and makes 2 or 3, fine. If those are 2-pointers from him, you'll live with that all day long against the Boston Celtics. They're going to beat you with the way that they run their offense at their best, which is a bunch of downhill penetrations and kickouts and make you chase the ball. That's when they're unstoppable and they spread out the 3-point shooting. You want to go to 2-point shots over the top of guys at 18 feet? Have as many as you want, as long as you're not fouling him, because if you're committing fouls on those, you get into the bonus really quickly. And now, good luck guarding Tatum and Brown. You can't touch him at that point. So just don't foul him. Get a hand up. Let him shoot over the top of smaller guys. If he makes a few, so be it. I think, to me, it's getting away from what their best offense is.
I think it's a great point. Though the part about fouling is really especially important because you are right. The Celtics, when they get you in foul trouble, they're impossible to guard. But the flip side of that is, this is my biggest pet peeve in basketball, not even NBA basketball in general. Garland is small enough that he can get away with like 1.5 or 150% of a foul before he gets called on a foul. So if you get switched on to Porzingis, there is a tact to the undersized defender that gets away with just constantly shoving, because then the big's idea is like, well, I got to shove back. And the moment you do that, you get called for the foul. So there is a little bit of possum that I think he can learn to play in the post. But like I said, last night he competed and I was impressed. Let's go to the Boston side of this. Do you have any big takes from last night? Again, it's hard to judge a team shorthanded, and they played Drew Peterson, who I don't know if I'd ever really watched his game. He plays 25 minutes last night, quite a bit of run. But is there anything you gleaned from what you saw from them last night?
Biggest take on them last night was I just absolutely hated their offense in the fourth quarter. I hated what they were doing. It was too stagnant. They ended up with a lot of different isolation plays, whether that was Tatum or actually, they had several with Peyton Pritchard, who had a great game. I mean, he was going to work on guys, but again, you'll live with it if you're the Cavs. I just thought Boston, 17 assists on the night, You get an assist number like that out of the Boston Celtics,
Yeah.
you've done a great job defensively because you're forcing them to play. Not that any of it's easy against that team because they got so much versatility offensively. But when you get them to play that style, it's a win for you, even if you end up losing the game. That's your best opportunity to guard them, is when you get them into nothing in the first 12 to 15 seconds of the clock on certain possessions, and then you force them into these one-on-one situations. That's a win for you, even if they end up making shots. And that's what I felt like Boston got into. I didn't like the way they played offensively in this game at all. In the second half, they got outscored in the fourth quarter, 43-27. And I thought their offense, in some ways, led to Cleveland's success offensively going the other direction. They weren't able to set up their half-court defense as much because I just didn't think their possessions lent themselves to great balance getting back and to getting really high-quality shots in the fourth quarter. So, there's a lot of different versions of Boston, Adam. Most of them are really good and tough to deal with. I thought that the fourth quarter last night was a version that you can handle.
Yeah, I agree. Lastly, just on the Cavs, do you think this was a big win for them? Because they go 15-0, and then all of a sudden you drop 3 of your next 5. And you have this matchup, and there's something to me of, all right, we're 15-0 2 weeks ago, and if you wake up to this morning in second place, that can be a little discouraging. So I kind of feel like that was an important win. It might be even so important. I don't know. I'm not saying they overlooked the Hawks. I give the Hawks credit, 2 wins in a row. But this was, to me, it just felt like a really important one for the Cavs to kind of continue their momentum. It could have been totally halted with the loss last night.
I totally agree with you. And I know people think, you can overreact to an 82-game season, but no, look, for whatever reason, Atlanta had their number for a couple games. And whatever. They got into a little bit of a track meet with that team, and Atlanta could play that style, and they did, and they outplayed them in those games. So, and now you get Boston at home, and you got to put those 2 games in your rearview mirror against Atlanta. Get ready for this team. And I don't care who's playing for Boston. This game mattered. You stop the losing streak. Now, if it didn't end Sunday, it certainly would end Tuesday night because they've got Washington at home. So they would have ended it there anyway. But to then not see, and I'm trying to look, they don't see them again until February 4th.
Man,
so you got to go over 2 months before you get to see them again. It's just a better taste in your mouth to get that split, end the 2-game losing streak. You feel a lot better about, especially the way it happened, making big plays down the stretch to beat that team. And now you go into, a meat of your schedule here in the middle of the season. You get away from them for a couple months and you feel a lot better about yourself.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, there was another great 1-2 matchup last night in the association, this time in the Western Conference. The Thunder and the Rockets, and the Rockets get another signature win. They're starting to collect signature wins this year. We're going to talk about that game and both sides of the perspective, as well as some shout-outs later on in the show. But first, I'll tell you about our presenting sponsor today. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com/AllNBA. Make sure you use that /AllNBA. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, present in Colorado. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. And if you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-522-4700. We're also a month away from New Year's, which for most people is a time to kind of make some new goals and oftentimes some fitness goals. From a core that won't quit to arms worth flexing, Fitbod is the perfect companion to keep your exercise fresh and yourself accountable. With personal goals in focus, Fitbod customizes every workout and adapts as you improve to avoid plateaus on your journey. This is what's nice about this app. This app really gets to know you and what it is that you're looking for, what goals you have. So maybe your goals are, I just want to get a home workout. I have very limited equipment, but I want to get something done at home. They'll tailor a workout based on the equipment that you have. You give it a time frame. Hey, I want a 30-minute intense workout. They'll tailor a workout for you. They've got visuals. So if you're doing a workout you've never seen before, you're not sure if you're doing it right, they have this nice animation that shows you exactly how you should be performing every single exercise. And then they have these workout streak features, these little push notifications, things that get unlocked that I'm telling you, these things can get addicting. When you have a streak going where you haven't missed a workout for several weeks, you don't want to miss. You want to keep it going. So it's nice to have an app that really helps you tailor those workouts. I'm telling you, it's the time of year. Everybody, every single year says, okay, this is the year I'm going to try to get in shape. Make that easier with Fitbod. Lock in and stay focused. Join Fitbod today to get your personalized workout plan. You can get 25% off your subscription or try the app for free for 7 days, but use our code fitbod.me/all-NBA. There's a link in the description of the show if you want to make it easier, but that's fitbod.me/all-NBA. All right, back here, segment 2. If you're new to the show, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Tim Legler and I are doing this 4 times a week. We're here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday this week, so you can plan your schedule. We have some big shows coming up this week because the NBA Cup on Tuesday is going to finalize, so that'll be exciting to look forward to. But last night, there was another great game as the Rockets downed the Thunder. They get the win. They're collecting these statement wins. They are the 2 seed this late in the season, and they just got a win over the 1 seed, 119-116. And this game had all the drama, including a crazy shot. Really, the game came down to Fred VanVleet catching a grenade and pulling up from the logo. Do you have that screen grab I sent you, James? Do you have that ready? Look at this shot, Legs. This was the game, 110-110 with 132 to go. And look at where he took this shot from.
And I want to tell you something. So in the play-by-play, if you pull it up, because I watched this game. If you look at the play-by-play, you know what the distance they say that shot is? It says Fred VanVleet makes 32-foot shot. I got news for you. Look how close he is to the midcourt line. You can't really see the line. Put that up again. You can't really see the midcourt line, 32. But he's significantly closer to that. Okay, and you got 23 feet from the top of the key to the midcourt line. He's a lot closer to the midcourt line. So I'm going to put it out there right now. That shot was probably much closer to 40 feet, 38 to 40, somewhere in there. And here's what's amazing about that shot. And it's actually 2 plays in this game stood out to me. Both of them came off of jump balls in tie games at that end of the floor. And that was the first one. There was 4 seconds, I think, on the clock. Jump ball goes up. They tip it out toward half court. Jalen Green gets it, takes one dribble, kicks it out to VanVleet, who lets it fly from, like I said, 38 to 40 feet, hits the 3 to go up 3. Go down the other end. Cason Wallace drains a 3 to tie it up. It was a great game.
Great shot as well, yeah.
And then inside of a minute, there was another jump ball at that end of the floor, and it goes up. It's like a 50-50 ball. Sengun gets on the floor, who rolls over. He's got possession. He just flips it to Dillon Brooks, who makes a fadeaway jumper, like 12-footer, falling back out of the lane to give them a 2-point lead. So, and it kind of, you think about it, right? It kind of typifies what we've been saying about Houston.
Yes.
Right? Like these guys don't mind a little bit of a rock fight. And so now you're talking about jump balls. Those are 50-50 situations. And they come up with both. And out of it, they make 2 huge shots. And they get a win against a really good team. In Oklahoma City, they gave them everything they could handle in the fourth quarter. They kept making big shot after big shot, whether it was Shea, Cason Wallace made a couple of them. But Houston just prevailed. They stayed mentally tough. Huge night out of VanVleet offensively, big game out of Sengun, and plenty of help from their supporting cast. And they win a game that, in a lot of ways, we could say statement game probably too often in this league. But I think it's a game that tells you a lot about yourself if you're the Houston Rockets. And they probably already know it because they seem like a confident group. But I just think it reaffirms who you think you are winning a game like this against that team that is a back and forth game in the fourth quarter, because OKC wins those games. And Houston was able to do it. And you look up, lo and behold, and the Houston Rockets are the 2 seed in the Western Conference right now. It's kind of wild.
And 15-6, it's not like they're a 2 seed because they have, everybody struggling. 15-6 is a heck of a record. And that one was a big one. And I love this game. I mean, I like both of these teams. We've talked about these 2 teams quite a bit this year so far, and for good reason. They're 1-2 in the West. But this was a smash mouth game. there's a lot of toughness on the court for both of these two teams. And I loved that the game came down to, it could have been silly, but that jump ball between Shea and Dylan Brooks, and then all of a sudden it spills into the bench and everybody comes out. And you think for a moment, like, is there going to be a fight? Is there going to be some text handed out? No, just good old fashioned basketball, man. These guys are playing rugby out there and everything was tough. And I like it. This Rockets team is not going to lose a tough matchup. They're not going to lose the toughness battle. And OKC's not really either. And that's why I like this game. At the end of the day, it just came to who can make the last play, and that was the Rockets.
And one thing I will say about this game, a lot of whistles. And I thought a lot of the fouls committed were silly fouls. They were careless both ways. I'm talking about stuff like pushing guys in the back on a rebound, when it's just obvious. Lazy grabs at guys that are driving and about to take a really tough shot over somebody, and then the guy chasing them just reaches in and rakes across their arm and commits an easy foul. I didn't think there was a lot of discipline defensively. They were competing hard, but at some point you also have to be smart in the way you finish off possessions. And as a result, 64 free throws in the game is a lot of free throws in today's NBA. There's usually significantly more threes than there are free throws. There were 76 threes, 64 free throws. That's a close ratio by today's NBA. Usually it's a lot more threes than free throws in most of these games. And here they were going to the line quite a bit and Houston took advantage of it. They were 30 for 39 from the line. And they were getting a benefit of the whistle, but I thought that both ways, particularly Oklahoma City, I thought the fouls were a factor for them. And it wasn't smart. Hartenstein got in foul trouble. He became basically non-existent defensively. He just kept backing away on drivers. He was backing away from Sengun in the post because he didn't want to pick up his fifth in the third quarter. And Houston took advantage of that. So that was just another element to the game that I thought Houston played that smarter, and it ended up being a big, big factor for them.
And by the way, obviously I love Hartenstein, but that is his biggest weakness, in my opinion, is he gets in foul trouble. Being in foul trouble absolutely affected the texture of this game in the fourth quarter because, to your point, he has to play a little bit softer defense. He was making a big impact for most of the game, but the fouls that he picks up are dumb fouls. Like, it's a guy where you could say, okay, you have fourth quarter, stay out of foul trouble, but play smart, and he'll get just a dumb little reach in, just a little slap down. And I don't think it actually matters for the Thunder when Chet Holmgren will win and if he returns to form, because Hartenstein's probably not playing 30 minutes every single night. You're probably going to stagger and play some other lineups. But for the time being, it's the number one thing I would say about that team is they don't have a big behind him. And so when he gets into foul trouble, the team is really compromised. It's definitely a concern.
For sure. But to his credit, he does it again, 19 and 13.
Four assists.
Five games back, 5 double-doubles. He's averaging just over 14 points, 14 boards, 2 blocks, 57%, 32 minutes a game since he came back. So everything they thought he would be when they pursued him over the summer, and we all knew it was a big deal, he's been even better than they thought. And I think in talking, and I called their game Friday night against the Lakers, and in talking to Coach Dagnall, I was asking, man, anything, you obviously knew this was a guy you wanted, but anything surprising you so far that you've seen that's even better than you thought it would be? And he was actually saying, yeah, his ability to really read everything that's going on and how smart he is offensively with his passing, his timely cutting to open pockets, which I've talked about a lot, his ability to maneuver around the rim and flash into the lane at just the right time to catch and get that little push shot. He says he's more athletic than he even realized, up close with his second jump and things like that. So he was raving about him. Obviously, they're thrilled to have him. Last night was their first loss since he came back. So give Houston credit, man, because it's a very good team. Even without Chet, this team is loaded. They've got more than enough every night to beat you. They can win any style game, shootout, defensive, struggle, whatever it may be. Last night was a little bit of both. And Houston still was able to prevail in the game. And so at this point, we stop here. We're a quarter of the way into the season, and you go, okay, man, they've convinced me. The Houston Rockets are a really good team.
Yeah, I buy him. I believe in them. I think they're for real good. I don't know if they're going to finish the number 2 seed. That's tough, but I know they can. They're capable of doing it. It's because they are just such a tough team. They're not going to be out toughed in a game. And a lot of that has to do with, we keep bringing up Tari Eason and Amen Thompson, but you bring those guys in off the bench and just the energy goes up. You have a smash mouth starting lineup, then you bring those guys in and it's like a second haymaker. But I want to talk about Amen Thompson. Only 9.6 rebounds last night, 1 assist. He's such an intriguing player to me because defensively, he's a monster. He's just so good. He reads the court so well. He guards so well. But offensively, he's starting to spread his wings just a little bit. And I know the numbers don't show it in last night's game, but he's starting to take a little bit more aggressive shots. And I think it's important for him specifically and, his development as a player, but it's probably important for Houston going forward. Is he an offensive player that can create? I just see him right now making moves one-on-one, trying to attack, and he's a really good passer, but even trying to attack and get into his jump shot or get into get to the rim. It's interesting to me. I wouldn't say successful yet, but to me, it's very interesting watching him try to become this offensive player. I'm just curious what you see in him in that regard.
No, you're not. You're not. It's not like you're just kind of imagining it because you kind of want it to happen. It is happening. I mean, 3 out of the last 4 games, he's taken double-digit shots. In his first, whatever it was, 12 or 13 games of the season, he did that once. That tells you right there. When you see that kind of uptick in a short period of time where he's getting into double-digit shots. Now, look, the 3-point shot it's just, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. It could. If you put enough time in and you're that committed to it, it can happen. And, man, that would open some things up for him. If he could just – and I'm not talking about, shooting him off the dribble or the step backs and stuff. I'm talking about just reliably shoot a corner 3. Yeah. If he can get to that point, he's going to add a lot in terms of how he's viewed around the league because he's already someone that I look at as valuable. You do too. He's always involved in winning plays. He's such a good defender. He's so smart defensively. His instincts are so good, versatility. Now, man, if you could add that layer, because that's the one thing that's, it's not going to happen, I don't think, this year. But he is looking more for opportunity. So he's anticipating being open more. That's like a skill set. When you anticipate it, it means you're more confident. When you don't anticipate being open and it's an afterthought to you, you're not a confident offensive player. And you're going to struggle as long as that's the case because shooting a basketball is an anticipatory act. It cannot be an afterthought. It has to be, right. I'm seeking to be open because I want to make something happen. I'm starting to see more of that out of him over the last, week to 10 days. So, and it's, he's such a young player. You're going to continue to see this kind of growth. Maybe the 3-point shot comes, maybe it doesn't. In the meantime, there are opportunities to find other ways to score, transition, slashing, put the ball down a little bit on a swing through. Like there's ways to get to the rim or mid-range if that's not your comfortability yet from 24 feet. Hopefully that comes for him because I think it's important to earn more playing time and be on the court more in any kind of game.
Yeah. Lastly, I find this is the funniest thing, Legs. We talked Rockets and we really praised them last week when they got the win over the Timberwolves. Jalen Green had 9 points and we kind of talked about, all right, Jalen Green's the one guy we're not sure. Then he goes for 41 the very next game and all of our comments are like, see, told you. And then we do a show today. He had 9 points again. It's just,
hey, listen, this is such a great point because today was the day he was going to get some love and we were going to have to eat a lot of crow. What we said about him. And look, I actually, to be fair, man, if you go back and look at all my comments about Jalen Green, going back to the last couple months of last season into the beginning of this year, I am kind of enamored with his talent some nights, man. I'm just so talented. Dude has so much ability. But what we were talking about that specific day was just like, man, decision-making and just like a feel for like what's good offense, what isn't. Is he ever going to get that? We're kind of beating him up that way. And then he goes for 41. By the way, I didn't text you with this. I forgot. You know what else we talked about that day? Was Charlotte was about to play the Knicks. And I said, one thing you could pencil in tonight is LaMelo Ball's going to shoot 25 times. I was wrong. He shot 35. He took 35 shots.
Funniest player in the NBA right now.
I said, if a guy like that gets, somebody with the profile of Brunson right now in his crosshairs, those point guard matchups, I swear, man, they're more like that mano a mano mentality, even than the star wings in this league. Like, Durant and Tatum or Durant and LeBron. I think when you get two of these point guards that can score, they have more of that mentality than any other position on the court. And that night, LaMelo Ball took 35 shots against Brunson. It was pretty funny.
The last thing on the Rockets here, and then we got to move on. But, because we didn't even mention Sengun, who's been absolutely balling lately, near triple-double last night. Jabari Smith, who gets a monster double-double, 15 and 14. But here's what I like. Jabari still 6 of 15. Shot still comes and goes. Confidence still comes and goes. The Rockets have established an identity that is their foundation. Smash mouth defense, tough defense. And that allows for guys to have off shooting nights, Jalen Green's and not being fully in rhythm, Jabari Smith not to be making his shots. And those things now become luxuries because you can win games with your defense. And last night, only 6 shots for Jalen Green, 6 of 15 for Jabari Smith, but both guys impacted winning last night. And to me, that's the sign of a truly well-coached team with a great identity. Is they don't count on the shot making or individual players' comforts. They win with what they do every single night. And I'm just so impressed with the Rockets. I love watching them, and I love all these storylines that they have, all these little players that are starting to try to figure out where they belong and how to come together, and they're winning through that process.
I want to have my last comment on them to be about Sengun, to follow what you said. And if you think about, there's a lot of great offensive players in this league and guys that put up numbers every night, right? There's a lot of them. We could make a long list of them. That doesn't mean all of those guys can get a really high quality shot for themselves every single time they get single coverage. Even some of the great players in this league, like sometimes they'll bail you out, man. They'll take a bad shot, a fadeaway three. They didn't have to, or they can get guarded and locked up by a certain defender on a certain possession and make it really tough for them to get off a good, clean look. I'm talking about even the top guys in this league. Sengun is one of those guys that gets something good every single time you play him straight up. And it's incredible. And he might miss the shot, but it's not going to be because he didn't get basically to the area of the floor he wanted to get to. If you double team him, he's certainly a good enough passer to hit kick out threes or hit slashers and cutters. But I'm fascinated every time the guy gets a single coverage in the post, or he gets a pick and roll and a switch and he rolls somebody down. He gets something good every time. And believe it or not, there aren't that many guys in this league that you can say that about.
Yeah, he plays smart basketball, man. And he really, guys like Thompson, have really learned how to cut and play off of him. And he's fun to watch, man. That Rockets team, I just gush about them because they're so fun, man. Every time they're on, I'm excited to watch. We're got a new segment we're going to start bringing in on Monday. Monday shout-outs presented by FanDuel. Remember, America's #1 sportsbook app. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. And Legs, I have some shout-outs. I did the list this week, and I got some shout-outs.
All right.
You can add to the list if there's any top of mind. But we're going to start with the 12-1 over their last 13 game Orlando Magic. Paolo Banchero goes down. Franz Wagner steps up. Jalen Suggs steps up. Anthony Black steps up. 12-1 in their last 13. They continue to impress. The Orlando Magic get a shout out.
They deserve it. And it's kind of amazing, man. They lose Banchero, who, no one's going to deny is not only their best player. This guy is a legitimate star. He's a stud. There's not a great matchup for Paolo Banchero. And you lose him for this extended period of time. First of all, Wagner was able to take his offense to a whole nother level, which I wasn't sure that could happen. Didn't have any doubt he'd play well, but is playing well not the same as carrying your team and leading your team every night and being great in the fourth quarter of close games and all of this stuff he did it, man. He's taken it up to 23 a game. And it's even higher than that since Banchero, been out really take away the first game. So Franz Wagner stepped it up. Suggs has been better. They're getting really good balance. We know going back to last year, they play really hard defensively and they compete and they've got really good length on their backside. So give them credit, man. They deserve the shout out. They are balling and they're just waiting to get their star back. And they position themselves right now to be third in the Eastern Conference with this long extended period of time without him. That actually kind of makes them really scary to upset the apple cart the second half of the year when they get him back.
And by the way, you look at the teams that are at the top right now in the standings, your Cleveland, Boston, Orlando, even the Knicks. You go Oklahoma City, Houston, Memphis, Golden State. The things these teams have in common are perimeter containment and physicality on the perimeter. All of those teams, in Orlando in particular, Suggs hits guys, man. He gets into guys. He gets physical and rattles you and then moves his feet so well. I just think they talked about allowing a little bit more physicality. I don't know if my personal eye test is noticing a dramatic difference last year to this year, but I will say the teams that seem to be doing well are the teams that can get physical while not fouling out on the perimeter, and Orlando fits that to a T. The next shout out, the Milwaukee Bucks. Don't look now, legs. They've won 6 in a row, and they're playing some pretty good basketball. They're all the way back up to 5th in the East because the East is terrible. But the Bucks are 10-9. They've won 6 in a row. They're 8-2 in their last 10. And this quote comes after the game from Giannis talking about Damian Lillard. He says, "Now we're going into our second year playing together, and our chemistry has been incredible so far. He hits me in the pocket. He doesn't hit me in the pocket. That means he has an open shot. He can go downhill, make plays for others. I think we trust one another. We definitely trust way more one another's decision making, and we give another space to operate." You know what? We were talking about the chemistry there at the start. At least they're saying some nice things and getting some wins playing together. And by the way, Giannis back in the MVP conversation with how he's performed over this last 10 games.
Yeah, no doubt, man. His numbers are just silly. And, what always matters when you start talking about all that stuff, like just even like all league and everything, your team better win some games. They had hit rock bottom, apparently. And I know there was a lot of stress there and there was frustration there. And Giannis had exhibited some of that. And it seemed like it was getting to them a little bit, where you started to wonder, man, maybe this just isn't going to work. It's not going to come together. And it's not just all because, Lillard and Antetokounmpo can't play together. That's not really what it was going to be about. They're not good enough defensively. They got older. They're slow. They're not a good transition defensive team. And so you say, well, add that all up, it spells mediocrity. That's really where they were. And you didn't know if they were going to be able to dig their way out. They've dug their way out, man. They've gotten all the way back to 5th. They're over 500. And let me just take a look, because I was just looking at this a couple of days ago when they came up. Looking at their schedule, it's fairly, I think it's fairly favorable here coming up. You got the Pistons, Hawks, at Boston, tough game. Brooklyn, at Cleveland, tough game. Washington, Chicago, Brooklyn, Chicago, Indiana, Brooklyn, Portland, Toronto. I mean, this isn't right. These aren't the teams that are the top of the food chain in this league. Except for a couple of these,
couple sprinkled games in, but yeah,
that's it. A couple of dashes in, and now that you've got a momentum, you feel a lot better. You're actually more likely that you could compete in and win those games against Boston and Cleveland. But you got a bunch of from mediocre to bottom feeding type teams, so they've got a chance now to really get some separation from the 500 line and set themselves up now to play their place where we expected them to be. I think going into the year of top 4 in the Eastern Conference. They were below the Mendoza line for a long time, and now they've dug their way out. So give them credit.
I see someone in the chat saying, yeah, easy schedule. It's true of Orlando too. Both Milwaukee and Orlando have had favorable schedules, but you know what? You still have to win, and they're winning all of them. So you tip your hat to them. The next shout out I have, another team that's taking care of business, the Memphis Grizzlies, also on a 6-game winning streak. And, again, not really signature wins. Portland, Detroit, New Orleans, Indiana just continues to struggle, but they're winning as well with Ja back. They're dynamic. They play hard, another physical team, and Ja Morant just fun to watch. So they are 14-7 this late into the season, right there behind Houston, by the way. Any notes on them?
Seen them twice recently. Very impressed. Both nights without Ja Morant. They had just gotten Bane back when I saw him too. He was really rusty. Just so impressed with how competitive they are. The number of guys that have cracked their rotation, that it's kind of almost hard to believe their stories and where they came from. And they've given them an opportunity, and those guys have played very well. But they play hard, man, every possession. And now the one thing they needed, that element of who do you have offensively that can make a play against any level defender? And they got that. Ja Morant's that guy, right? So now you have an element, and Bane's going to find his footing, and he's going to be back doing what he normally does soon. He hasn't really got his rhythm yet. They're a team that you look at, hey, nice. This is some nice new pieces, some young pieces we didn't expect to be in the rotation. And now they're starting to get their star power back. And again, you can say the same thing about their schedule. Like, they've had 6 wins. Nothing stands out. But here's the one thing. All of those games by double digits.
Yeah,
And in some
it's
cases, a
easy.
lot more than that. And you're, I'm talking about the high end of double digits. You're taking care of what you're supposed to. That's a great sign for a team, particularly when they were shorthanded for some of those. And the one game, by the way, that wasn't was Philly. And they were up 18 in the fourth quarter of that game. It ended up 6. It really wasn't a 6-point game. And
Right.
so they have taken care of business, even though it's been, again, mediocre teams. You have to get yourself right at some point against whoever, then you'll be tested. Once you're back closer to full strength, you'll have a much better feel. But it's certainly nice to go into the better part of your schedule, the harder part, winning some games where you feel like, hey, okay, we're where we're supposed to be right now. Now let's go take on some of the top teams, and you get a much better idea, where they really stand in this league.
Next shout out, the Dallas Mavericks, who are 13-8 in the 5 seed, and they've won 8 of their last 10. And I think it actually goes more than that. 8-1 in their last 9. Luka was back last night. He had 36 points in a win over Portland. But I'll tell you the real story here, Legs. I tried to tell him coming into the year, it's Quentin Grimes. That's the X factor. You got to play him. Earlier on, they weren't playing him. These last 3 games, 21, 24, 28, he's starting to score. He's starting to be a bigger contributor, playing more minutes. I'm joking. He's not the reason, but he is one of the reasons. The Mavericks have figured it out here a little bit.
I'm glad you said you were joking, because I was going to call you out for that as well. Look, no, he's a guy we I know how much you like him. You like him probably a little bit more than I do. That's okay. Man. The bottom line is you're right, man. He had 28 last night, 9 for 13, 5 for 7 from the 3. He's not going to have a lot of games where he's over 20, but he doesn't have to. He just has to be consistently available and able to make some shots. It's funny, as Luka comes back, and he's only had 4 games all year where he shot over 50% from the field. And because I've been hard on Luka. I don't think Luka's played particularly well. I thought he hurt them beginning of the season. I thought his shot selection at times, the way he was continuing to hunt, and he wasn't really in rhythm, and didn't look like he was particularly in great condition. And he was always playing with some sort of injury. Takes a little time off, comes back, clearly legs feeling great, and was able to kind of almost like, okay, my season is going to start now. Like, that's what it kind of felt like from Luka in this game. And I know it's Portland, they're not a very good team, but
yeah,
still,
but they're tough. They compete, man. Portland has
15 for 24 for Luka. Like, that's a great sign for them. Let's see now if he can string some together of that level of consistency. The key is they were winning games while he was out, man, and now he comes back, and it wasn't like they took a step back now. Oh, let's reincorporate Luka and get back into his ball dominance, and now we lose, because there'll be all kinds of questions, like, if that were to happen. It creates drama in your locker room sometimes when that happens. You win when a guy's out, come back, you struggle. Well, they came back, and it was against a bad team, but he played great, played efficiently, and they had great numbers offensively. Their metrics were incredible. So that's a good sign for Dallas.
Last little mini shout out here. The Atlanta Hawks have won 3 in a row. Before that, they'd lost 3 in a row. So it's not like this is a long-term trend, but they get 3 in a row, including over Charlotte and 2 games against Cleveland. And Legs, the reason I'm shouting them out, one, we talked about that matchup. Could it be a potential playoff matchup? And is there something to a Hawks? The Cavs are going to be a 1 or a 2 seed. The Hawks, if they make the playoffs, are going to be at the end. So that could be a first round matchup. And you always look and go, that's interesting. This team got 2 wins against a higher seeded team. But then also, I don't know if you heard about this. There were chants of, we want the cup after beating the Cavs. Why? They are one of 3 teams that have punched their ticket to the elimination round, the Rockets and the Warriors being the other 2. The Hawks are in the cup elimination round. But more importantly, this matchup with the Cavs, is there something you saw there that makes you think, hey, maybe it's just a favorable matchup?
Yeah, man, for whatever reason, I don't know. It's hard to know. But for whatever reason, they had a very hard time corralling them. Atlanta was able to put up basically an average of 121 points a game on them. And Cleveland's one of the better defensive teams in the league. Yeah. So I don't know that it makes a lot of sense. For whatever reason, they had a very difficult time corralling Trae Young, and his playmaking was every bit as influential as his scoring. Atlanta also has a win recently against Boston, in Boston.
That's
so
right.
You go figure, man. They're a 500 team, and they've got 3 of their wins are against the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference. So go figure, but smart to give them a shout out now while they're on a 3-game winning streak, because you never know with Atlanta. They could lose 5 or 6 in a row at any point. So you got to give teams their love at the right time on this show, and I think that's a good call on your part.
And we might be talking about them next week as we go to the Cup elimination round, and they will be there. So we'll see. All right, we have some super chats before we get out of here, including one we missed last week, James. Let's start with that one. Psycho Blue. We always appreciate the homie Psycho Blue. We apologize for missing it last Wednesday. B-Ball Cthulhu isn't surprised the Rockets are the new bullies on the block. After all, their coach will take your money and man. James, you could have prepped me for this one, man. You walked me into some murky waters here, man.
I wanted you to just steam right through that, Adam. I'm surprised you caught yourself there. Because I was reading it faster than you were saying it. And I was like, oh, here we come. This is going to be good.
You know what? I don't apologize that we missed your super chat last week now. All right, what else do we got, James? What else do we got? Flying Indigo tells us, do you guys think this Rockets run is sustainable? And if so, how far do y'all think they'll go, being that they don't have a legitimate superstar? You know, the superstar piece of that does make this where I just don't buy them as like they're going to win multiple rounds. But when you're the Rockets, you haven't been to the playoffs, just getting there and winning a round to me is great experience. So I don't even worry about it. They're in the sweet spot where I don't think you should be worrying about title contention. You want to get a round, maybe 2 rounds, and they have enough talent to do that.
Well, here's the deal. Houston shows up every night with their guys. So first of all, their guys play. They show up. They haven't dealt with really anything too dramatic in terms of injuries. And most teams are dealing with it all the time. So if that's the case, you got to look at these other teams that you could potentially play. There's lots of questions about a lot of teams in the Western Conference, and they might get sorted out. But I still have a lot of questions about Dallas. I have questions about the Lakers. I have questions about Phoenix. I have questions about Denver. I have questions about Minnesota. I mean, these are all teams we expected to be near the top of the Western Conference. And all of these teams, I think there's stuff that you're wondering about. Okay, so even Oklahoma City, as good as they are, at some point they got to incorporate another big into the lineup. That's going to take a little bit of an adjustment period. They're going to be fine though in the end. I'm pretty sure about them. There's a lot of question marks in the West, and right now, Houston, there aren't a lot of questions about, and sometimes that's enough. Are they going to get to the finals? I don't think so. Are they going to get to the conference finals? I don't think so. Could they win a round and play into the second round and play somebody really tough into the second round? Yeah, right now, as I sit here, yes, I think that's something that they could pull off because you don't know who they're going to play. Some of these teams are going to have injuries. Still, some of this stuff hasn't worked out. Look at Minnesota right now. They were in the conference finals last year. They're 9-10, and they got inner locker room turmoil and all kinds of stuff going on. So that's my point. There's still stuff all those teams got to figure out, and I kind of feel like we know what Houston is, and they're all showing up every night. And that gives you a chance in this league, a better chance than most. So for now, yeah, man, I'm thinking this team absolutely could be a Final Four team in the West, potentially. Let's see what happens with some of these other teams, though, as they start to figure out their issues and get guys back from injury.
And when you talk about superstar leap, Sengun can make that. I don't think he'll make it this season. I mean, he's a great player. He's already a star. But when you say like a superstar that can win you around, I always remember Jokic's game 82. He played against the Timberwolves. And to that point, you weren't sure if he could be the cornerstone guy. That was an elimination game. Jokic goes for 35. He outplayed Jimmy Butler in that game. And it's like he leveled up because the pressure, you get into a playoffs and you level up and become the best version of yourself. I think that's when you're the Rockets, that's what you're looking at. Get us on that stage and let's see how our guys react to that moment and who levels up based on the pressure. All right, last one. We had one last one, and it comes from Psycho Blue again. 20 piece. We appreciate you, man. B-Ball Cthulhu thinks the Cavs will win the NBA Finals if they bring back those tasty black and blue spray paint uniforms from the Terrell Brand and Sean Campera. We have a photo of this, right? These ones, right? The David Bowies.
Those are I played against those Terrell Brandon teams, man. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
those are rough on the eyes. But you know what? It might distract the other team just enough to get the championship. Legs, great show, man. 5 days off. We went a little bit long, but we had so much to talk about.
Yeah, 2 great games last night, I think, led the way. And actually, there was a ton of close games. I was doing the math on it, man. There was 9 games decided by 5 points or less or something. It was a crazy night in the league with dramatic finishes. Big night by Wembanyama we didn't get to. So Minnesota's got issues. We'll get to all these topics. But last night, we thought those 2 games deserved the most attention. I thought it was a great show.
We got to get to the Spurs soon, man. That's the team, right? We're probably most neglecting at the moment because they are doing some interesting stuff. Everybody, we got a show again tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. Make sure that you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Set alerts so you always get a little push notification. You never miss when we are live. Hit that like button for us on the way out. We'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.